Hey guys, welcome to Brian's Man Cave. So today is another episode of Flick Picks, and I've chosen a movie that I enjoyed since I was a kid, and I still enjoy it today. Every time it's on, I like to watch it. I do have it on VHS, I think. I don't think I have it on DVD or anything else like that. But it's Twins, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger, and opposite side is Danny DeVito. And that's a weird pairing when it comes to a movie like Twins, and that was the whole gag. I mean, you look at someone like Arnold Schwarzenegger, who's tall, buff, built, and then you look at Danny DeVito, kind of short, a little bit rounded, and not only that, but Arnold Schwarzenegger is, well, at the time, in the 80s, was known as your action hero guy. I mean, he was in Conan, he was in Predator, he was in a lot, Terminator, the list goes on of all these like great action films. Danny DeVito on the opposite spectrum, I mean, yeah, sure, he did some other things like One Flew Over a Cuckoo's Nest, where he was not necessarily the comedic character in there, but he was in Taxi, the TV show Taxi, and he was in a bunch of other comedies. So it's a weird pairing, but it makes sense the way the movie was created. It was supposed to be that kind of awkward thing where one twin is completely opposite the other, and that's the whole premise of the movie. Is it kind of revolves around the idea that they genetically create a human being, and by doing this, they find, I think it was 7 men, something like that. There was a whole bunch of men that they would actually extract DNA. They don't get into specifics. You don't actually hear how they do it, which is a good thing. But they extract DNA from these people, and they kind of blend it all together to create this, perfect specimen. They kind of in vitro into a woman who gives birth to is supposed to be the perfect man. Now, there's a caveat to that because she ends up having twins. So I guess what they say is the thing just severs into 2, and she gets 2 kids. An unexpected plot twist, I guess. But what happens is they keep Arnold Schwarzenegger's baby, which they show like in the beginning there when they're born. You could see that Arnold Schwarzenegger's, the baby version of him, is really big, and Danny DeVito's the small little baby. And even Danny DeVito's character, the baby, kicks Arnold Schwarzenegger, kind of like he's a little jerk. And you can kind of tell he's kind of like the misfit. And so they keep Arnold Schwarzenegger as the one with all of the, superior genetics, and DeVito, they kind of just adopt him away. Now, it's kind of weird because you don't think they would do that, especially when this is like a controlled experiment. You would think they'd want to take DeVito's character and make, see what they could do with him. But in this case, they just kind of send him off to a foster care or whatever, foster home, and he becomes adopted or whatever. And they're fine with that because their experiment is really on Arnold. And they even kind of explain it where there's a scene in the movie where the doctor, I guess the scientist guy who fronted the whole thing, tells them both that, all the great stuff went into Arnold and then all the crap left over went into DeVito. And so it's kind of an insult, and it's funny all around, but it's also kind of sad because then he kind of thinks, he's just kind of the junk left over. But he's not. I mean, he's a really colorful character in the movie. Now, they do show that he's kind of, he is a misfit. So he can't really hold down a proper job. He's cheating on his girlfriend. He's running around trying to make the most amount of money. I mean, there's just a lot of, problems with him. Whereas Arnold grows up on this nice little island. He's completely illiterate. He reads all the time. He gets all his knowledge from books. He knows, martial arts. They train him to do everything. It also makes you wonder why. Why are they doing this? What is this for? Is this an experiment to make humanity better? Is this an experiment for just their own, reasoning? Like, they don't really explain that. They're just like, hey, we want to make the best human being we could possibly make. So what ends up happening is the two of them, well, I guess he tells Arnold Schwarzenegger, his character's name is Julian in this one, Julian Benedict. he tells the character, the scientist guy, that he's got a brother, and this is closer to the beginning of the movie. And of course, Arnold Schwarzenegger's like, "Oh, I got a brother. I got to go find him." And DeVito's character, Vincent, has no clue that this brother even exists. He's adopted. He comes from a foster home. So Schwarzenegger decides, hey, I'm going to set sail off this island, and I'm going to go find my brother. And that's when the whole movie really takes place, is his whole quest to find his brother, tell him we're twins, and all is going to go right in the world. Unfortunately, DeVito's character, Vincent, is getting himself into a lot of trouble, which, Julian, which is Schwarzenegger, has to, kind of dig him out of this problem. And so the movie goes from, this comedy to getting into a little bit more serious at this point, because now you're dealing with these kind of, rough guys. I wouldn't say they're, mobsters or anything like that. They're just more of a gang. And, there's some violence and stuff in that, and it does get a little bit gritty at this point where Schwarzenegger has to rough them up a little bit. But really the premise here is that DeVito's character finds something in a vehicle that he steals that's worth $5 million, and he wants to claim that himself to get that $5 million. And in order to do that, he has to drive across the state. And of course, Schwarzenegger needs to follow along because he's got nothing better to do. But also, he gets a lead on who his mother is, and he wants to find his mother. And he thinks that DeVito is going to be, happy to find his mother. But it's not that simple. DeVito's not happy to find his mother. He thinks his mother's dead. He thinks his mother didn't care about him. She abandoned, all that kind of stuff. So you got these two people who want to actually, go across the state. One's got one goal objective in mind, to find the mother. The other one just wants to find the $5 million. And of course, they're bringing along girlfriends along the way. And that's pretty much it. I mean, that's the premise of the movie. The funny parts are really just the two actors themselves and how they kind of bounce off each other. It's sort of like with Dumb and Dumber, with Jim Carrey and Jeff Daniels. You got these two different personalities that just kind of bounce off each other and make a really, actually interesting formula when it comes down to it. Another thing that's interesting about this movie is there's a lot of little errors that you can find, which is fun. I mean, I always find that fascinating, people who spend their time looking for errors in movies, where they find, problems with the scene, problem with the set, problems with the continuity. So there is a bunch of those in there as well. One that I know for sure is they're in a bar and they go into into the restroom, and there's a bottle of beer, a weird bottle of beer, just sitting on top of the hand dryer. You see it when they walk in. Then when they're talking later, it's gone. It just disappears. And then when they're leaving, I think it's there again. So, it's just those little continuity errors. And I remember watching some stuff on Twins about that. There's a bunch of other scenes in there. I mean, there's some funny scenes with Schwarzenegger where he's singing a couple of songs, and he's dancing around in the room with his towel on after he had a shower. It's just funny the way he just pronounces himself in that scene. And of course the girl walks in and sees him dancing and singing to himself, and he looks like a complete idiot. And then he feels kind of embarrassed at it, but that's the part that makes you laugh. There's other scenes where he goes into the grocery store and he's looking at a Playboy, and he's obviously never seen a naked woman in his life, and he's got this big grin on his face. Of course, everybody's walking by like, what a pervert. There's other, there's just a lot of great scenes. This is one of those movies where a lot of the funny scenes really stuck with me throughout, my childhood. Even today, I still think of those scenes and they make me laugh. There's a second movie coming out called Triplets, and apparently this Triplets movie was supposed to come out much earlier, and it didn't, because Arnold Schwarzenegger at the time was the governor of California, and he wasn't doing movies anymore. And of course they're not going to try and replace Arnold Schwarzenegger. You can't. It's Arnold Schwarzenegger. So it was shelved. But there is talk now that they're going to bring it out, which is cool. I don't know how it's going to look. I mean, DeVito, he's a little bit older. Well, they're both a little bit older, so their age is showing. But the interesting thing about this one is, it's called Triplets, and so they're going to have a third one, and the third character is Eddie Murphy, another classic 80s star who's still relevant in today's, 2019 as I'm filming this, still relevant. So it's really interesting that, you know, Eddie Murphy, you know, first of all, he's a black guy, and they're both white guys. So how are they going to become related? I'm starting to, like, you know, reflect back in the picture that they showed of the men. Was there a black person in there? Or, you know, what kind of story are they going to come up with? Or is it going to be a con? Is he going to convince them that he's a brother, but he's really not? I'm really curious to see how they're going to do that and work it into the story. It's really going to be interesting. So I don't know. I haven't seen much about it, the release time or anything like that, if they're even filming it. Apparently, according to IMDb, the Internet Movie Database on the web, it's saying that this was greenlit in like 2012. So it's 2019. So I don't know anything else beyond that point. But it definitely seems interesting, and I hope it comes to fruition, and I hope it's not terrible, because they have a habit of screwing up sequels, especially when there's so much time afterwards. And I'm going to go back to Dumb and Dumber and say, you know, I was not really that thrilled with Dumb and Dumber 2, which came out 20 years later. I mean, it was okay. I just thought it could have been a lot better, so I hope they don't mess this one up. Another movie that I know I talked about before in a previous video was The Three Amigos, and I was really hoping they would make a sequel to that. And of course the actors are all still alive, so it's still possible. I just don't think it's going to happen, but that would be another cool one to see resurrected on the big screen. Anyways, hope you liked the video. Let me know if you've ever seen Twins, what you think of it. What's your thought on Arnold Schwarzenegger doing funny movies versus action? I mean, obviously he's a better action star than a comedian, but I think his comedy kind of has some kind of flair to it. Anyways, yeah, hope you liked the video. Let me know what you think of the movie. Let me know if you've seen it before, and if you're excited about triplets. Thanks for watching. Hope you subscribe. Talk to you later.